It's time for me to move away from the game of basketball.
Westbrook stops at the 1 and goes down to a knee.
Bitter labor dispute caused the cancellation of the playoffs.
You don't know when he's going to be back. Two really serious concussions.
Hello, welcome back to How To Fantasy Sports. In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to begin taking a look at the rankings that we have for the 2012 fantasy football season. This video is going to be sort of a combination of our two previous videos, one that looked at our drafting guidelines as well as our drafting strategies for the 2012 season. Now, we're going to provide rankings on the players that we're choosing for in our draft, but these rankings aren't going to be so much which players we think at the end of the year will return the best value, but rather which players that we want to be leading our team at that position into our fantasy football season. So, without further ado, here are our rankings. In number 1, we have Tom Brady. We can't imagine this guy having a bad season at all, especially with the additions of Brandon Lloyd and if Aaron Hernandez can stay healthy for an entire season. This team was built for the pass. They're going to throw a lot. The ceiling on Tom Brady's season is very, very, very high. If you want to make Tom Brady the #1 player overall, we would be just fine with that as well too. We think Tom is going to have an outstanding season this year. In number 2, we have Aaron Rodgers. He's as consistent as any quarterback can come out there, and he is really right up there with Tom Brady in what we expect from him this season. But we still think that unlike the Patriots, who just seem to put the pedal to the floor and don't care at all about running up the score, the Green Bay Packers seem to take the foot off the throttle a little bit once they get out ahead. So I think that does limit the appeal of Aaron Rodgers just a little bit in terms of ranking him over Tom Brady. But these two are clearly the class of the quarterback category. Now after those two, we lose confidence in the quarterback position quite quickly. In fact, the picks that we have from number 3 to number 7 probably aren't going to return as much value for where you're going to take them in the draft. And it's actually best to avoid them, focusing in on other positions, and just take one of the quarterbacks that come after them. In number 3, we have Matthew Stafford. We still like the Detroit Lions team, and we think that because they're going to throw a lot, there's a potential for Matthew to have a really, really good season. I mean, he is still number 3 ranked after all. But that offensive line still allows him to get hit quite a bit, and the chances that he'll have to miss a game due to injury, considering his injury problems in the past, is quite high. He's just not worth the risk at this position. In number 4, Drew Brees. Yes, he is an ultra-talented QB who has been reliable in the past, and number 4 is not a low spot, but some people are putting him up much higher, and we think that is absolutely incorrect. Coming off the offseason that he has with the contract problems that he had, he lost his receiver, and he's losing his coach for the entire year. We think he is a regression just waiting to happen, so don't overpay for Drew Brees this year. In number 5, Eli Manning. He's a tough one to sell to the fantasy community because he has had problems performing consistently from game to game. But this guy has 2 great receivers and not much of a running game there to speak of, especially a running game that has the chances of falling apart due to injuries. So we like the Giants to throw and throw a lot, and so because of that, you have to respect what Eli Manning can get to in fantasy. But is he worth the high draft pick? Probably not. So again, avoid. Number 6, Peyton Manning. He's back. We're not concerned about his injury any more than we have to be concerned about any other particular player stepping on a field and taking shots. It's a rough game, and Peyton Manning is just as likely to get injured as any other player. In the end of the day, he's Peyton Manning. He's got 2 great young receivers that he's throwing to and a tight end that he's very familiar with. It should be a very good season for Peyton Manning. We like him, and we like him higher than most people, so you might actually be able to find him in a good value spot, so you might want to consider picking him up. But if his ranking keeps growing as he keeps showing more and more progress in the preseason, you might want to avoid him. Number 7, Cam Newton. Again, don't overpay here. There are a lot of red flags on this player. I mean, he didn't throw for more than 300 yards once after week 4. Plus, he's not going to be utilized as much in the running game anymore now that Mike Tolbert's there. So don't chase his high TD total that inflated his value. He still has some value. He's number 7. This isn't bad spot, but he's not going to be able to repeat a lot of the running totals that really overinflated his total last year. Really, avoid this situation and avoid overpaying. Which brings us then to picks 8 through 10, which are actually quite dependable picks, and if you can get them late in your draft, you'll find that they will return a pretty good value for your team. So number 8, Tony Romo, number 9, Phillip Rivers, and number 10, Michael Vick. Again, with Michael Vick, don't get too cute here and don't get caught up in the fact that he's had a couple of amazing fantasy games. This is a guy who has only once ever played an entire 16-game season in his 9-season career. He's never thrown for more than 3,400 yards in a season. He's never thrown for more than 22 TDs. He is a running quarterback on a team that doesn't need him to run. So your expectations for him are inflated because of what he's done in the past in particular games, but not what he's done on seasons, when really what he's done in a complete season hasn't been that spectacular. Let him fall. If he doesn't fall, be happy that you didn't take on all that risk. And that brings us to our last few decent quarterback options, specifically at 11, Matt Ryan, at 12, Ben Roethlisberger, and number 13, Jay Cutler. Now, if you can get Matt Ryan at this back end of your draft with the receivers that he's got and the running game that is quickly falling apart there, I think you've got a great value pick in Matt Ryan. I think he's got the highest ceiling out of anyone that you could pick this late in the draft. So you really have limited reasons to force picking a quarterback after Brady and Rodgers are gone, when you have such good options still remaining at the end of your draft. Now, if you're in a 10 or 12 team league that only plays with one quarterback, you probably won't need to draft another quarterback for your team. There's just no real reason, considering if you draft one of these other quarterbacks, you're always going to start them, and even for their bye week, there'll always be a quarterback option ready for you on the waiver wire. So there's just no real need to tie up a bench spot by drafting a second quarterback for your team. Unless you think the ceiling on one of these players is higher. And in these next 4 quarterbacks, we actually think there is a potential that their ceiling might be higher than one of the 13 ranked quarterbacks that we talked about earlier. Specifically, number 14, Matt Schwab, number 15, Ryan Fitzpatrick, number 16, Robert Griffin III, and number 17, Joe Flacco. In general, we feel like these people have the ability to outperform one of the 13 that we talked about earlier, but the chances of it happening probably aren't that great, and so it's not worth the risk of drafting them on draft day. But if you do feel like that maybe they could potentially outperform one of those top 13, then feel free to draft them for one of your backup spots. After that, we've got 4 quarterbacks that are good quarterbacks. They're just on really offensively challenged teams. Specifically, Josh Freeman, Carson Palmer, then Andy Dalton, and Andrew Luck. We recognize the temptation to rank Andrew Luck much higher in our rankings, but really the reality of the situation is that he's an unproven rookie on a team that's really not that deep in offensive weapons. It's still the same team that they had last year, and that team wasn't really that great of an offensive juggernaut. So we're not really that excited about Andrew Luck this season as much as we'll be excited about him in future seasons. Which then brings us to the remaining quarterbacks in our rankings. Number 22, Christian Ponder. Number 23, Alex Smith. Number 24, Sam Bradford. And number 25, Matt Flynn. And there you go. Those are our quarterback rankings for the 2012 fantasy football season. We hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more videos and more rankings on the players for the 2012 fantasy football season. If you have any questions, you can email us at question@howtofantasysports.com. Otherwise, subscribe to this channel so you can stay informed when there's more videos coming up. Thank you very much.